Alright guys, quick little tip video on how to install the EG DC engine race kit. So here's everything the kit comes with. Got a bracket for the driver's side mount, bracket for the passenger side mount, 3 bolts and long spacers for the rear mount that is connected onto the subframe. Then you get 2 extra nuts here. I'll explain those in a sec. Here's the bracket installed onto the passenger side chassis mount. And they do come, it's a very snug fit, so it might seem like they don't fit at first, but yeah, they do. You can even squeeze these in a little bit to get it to drop in, and I did that on purpose so guys with the aftermarket mounts that kind of look like that, they'll have an easier time fitting in here, because yeah, even with the aftermarket mounts, it's a very snug fit in here just on the normal chassis. So you add this bracket in, which is 1/8 of an inch thick on either side, and it's super snug. You have to do some mods to the aftermarket mounts if you want to use them, but it is possible. And you got to do a little bit of mods to the stock mount anyway, so no matter what, you got to mod the passenger side mount a little bit. So what you got to do is trim away this area. Normally it kind of comes out like that, and same with this side, you got to trim a little bit, and that is just to get in there. That's just to clear the chassis like that, because otherwise when you would raise this mount up, it would just knock into the bottom of the chassis here. So you just got to cut a little bit away so it clears. I cut a little bit excess because this is my first one. I didn't know exactly what needed to happen, but yeah. And then you'll also need to trim this part down 1/8 of an inch and this part down 1/8 of an inch. Basically the goal is to make the mount itself a little skinnier, 1/8 of an inch on either side, so it fits in between this bracket. But as far as the installation of the bracket goes, it is super simple. Get it in there, and then one bolt goes through and then goes through the welded nut on the chassis, and then the other side, same thing, a bolt, but I supply this nut for the front. And when you get the kit, it'll have 2 nuts, and the other one is for the top up here. And this is the mount installed. So yeah, you use your OEM bolt through the top here with that extra nut I supply. And yeah, simple as that. That's the passenger side. The driver's side is the exact same, except you do not need to trim anything around here or here. It just fits on the driver's side, but you do need to skinny up the mount 1/8 of an inch on either side, just like the passenger. And then for the aftermarket mounts that look like this is the wrong mount, but I'm just using this as an example. You can see down here the head of the bolts, they fit pretty snug in between the stock mounts, so there's no issue with that. But with these aftermarket mounts, since this bushing is flat here, you'll need to make a little gouge at the bottom right here below the hole, just for that head of the bolt to sit in right here. And yeah, these will have to be skinnied up quite a bit too. Basically this whole, everything that's red here will have to go. You could do one of these and see what you need to trim, and just kind of use the bracket to make a line here and here. And then if you did it that way, it'd look very clean install, and just take out this section of polyurethane. Kind of messy, but it is worth it, because stock or the aftermarket poly mounts are very nice and needed with this kit a little bit. They're not needed, but it's nice to have some form of solid mount, whether you make DIY mounts out of these, which I think is the way to go, because you can mod these. It is a bit of a bitch, but it is possible. These mods are a little bit easier, and if you just do a DIY poly mount, then you got your solid mounts with a little bit less effort. But yeah, you will need, you don't need them, but it is nice to have some sort of poly mount, because with this kit you use the passenger, driver, and rear mount only, and then the torque mounts got to go. You can keep your AC bracket if you have it, but where the AC bracket shoots off and then bolts up on the underside of the chassis there, that just needs to be disconnected so the motor can actually raise up. But the front mount isn't used, so you're only rocking 3 mounts. So yeah, some sort of, even if you use stock mounts on front or on the driver and passenger, and then one of these guys on the rear, that would be like the easiest way to go. But yeah, install is simple concept. It's just it just takes a little bit of work, but it's what you got to do to raise the motor, because we're putting it in a spot that Honda did not intend it to be, so it takes some work. And the reason I went on the inside of the bracket like this is because the other way could have made this wider, which would have made all these mods irrelevant. You wouldn't need to do it, but what you would have needed to do instead is cut away this, and that just looks, yeah, it would look like trash. So I figured if I had an EG and I was installing this, I would rather put in extra work and do this to get this bracket on the inside for a much cleaner look. And yeah, I'm hoping you guys agree with me on that, because cutting all this, yeah, looks bad. This way requires absolutely no cutting to the chassis, just keeps everything nice and clean. So now for the rear mount. Alright, for the rear mount, we're in the EK right now, but it's got a EG subframe, and even if it was an EK subframe or an EF, it's all exactly the same as this. So the spacers just go in between the mount and the subframe, and then the longer bolts go through. Simple as that. Concept could not be easier. In practice though, this is the biggest pain in the ass to install if your motor is still in. So it's cake if your motor's out and you're installing this kit at the same time as putting a motor back in. Definitely slap this guy in first, because it will save you a ton of headache. Otherwise, as you can see, like normally you'd have your intake here and like a bunch of other shit just right here. It's an incredible pain in the ass to get these bolts in, and that goes for DC, EG, EK, EF. No matter what, if the motor's in, this mount is a pain in the ass. If your motor is in though, and that's with I guess, I mean, you can always take your motor out, but if you really don't want to do that, the other easy option is to just drop the subframe. Also kind of a pain, but not nearly as big of a pain in the ass as getting this in with your motor in and your subframe in. So even if you just drop the subframe down, not completely take it out, but just loosen the bolts to drop it down a little bit, you can get access from the backside, somebody underneath, and shimmy these spacers in between, and then have somebody from the top drop these bolts in. It's a pain in the ass, but I've done it. It's possible. Other people have done it as well. But yeah, there's really not much to the rear mount other than the installation with your engine in. It's incredibly pain in the ass, but very, very, very simple concept. Yeah, and like I said, same exact thing for EF, for EG, for DC, for EK. Doesn't matter, it's all the same. 3 bolts just like this. They might look a little different and be slightly different positions, but yeah, same concept, pretty easy, tough in practice. Alright, so hopefully this helps you guys out a little bit. If you have any more questions, just DM the Stance Shack on the Insta, and I'll do everything I can to explain stuff even more. I think I did a pretty good job explaining everything. But yeah, if you need extra help, just let me know. I'll help you out. We will be doing a actual install video on my homie Loman's car. His motor is currently out, so I figure a perfect time to just slap a raise kit in there and film it, so we can get like an actual, or you guys can get an actual visual on what it looks like inside the car and like the whole process, because there is some shimmying you have to do with the mounts to get them in. So yeah, there's a few different ways you can do it, with taking off the mounts from like the trans and stuff, getting it all in there, putting the bracket in there, then sticking the mount into the bracket and then bolting it to the trans, or keeping it bolted on the trans and then just dropping everything in from the top. So I'm not sure which way we're gonna do it, but yeah, however we do it, we'll film it and I'll get an even better explanation than hopefully I did just now. But yeah, like I said, any more questions, just DM the Shack and I'll help you out. So hope this helps.